The first real question that I really had the nerve to ask my mother was about hell and why people would go to hell. So, Jewish people don't believe in Jesus as a savior. So, if a Jewish person did good all their life and they were helpful, they were just a good person all their life, and then they died, you're telling me that they would go to hell. But a person that would be, say, like a mass murderer on their deathbed said that they accepted Jesus Christ into their life, they would go to heaven. And I said, is that how it would be? She just kind of said, yeah, that was it. That messed me up. I mean, I was just kind of like, that doesn't even like make sense or compute. Having grown up in the church, I didn't like the idea of just accepting what people told me. That was part of my church heritage, where you just believe, you have faith and you accept. I started to research and starting to research ancient Egypt. It also answered questions about Christianity that I didn't even know could be answered. The Kemetic spiritual system had been distorted by Christianity. And the way that they did that was to change spiritual concepts that were really a part of all of Africa and are a part of really most spiritual systems around the world. One of the main ideas that they distorted was the idea that we're born sinful. Okay? That we're born sinful and in some way separate from the Creator. The first supposed parents of humanity were sinful, and because of their sin, everybody else was sinful. It's a ridiculous idea, but we accepted it. We had faith. We just believed. So from a Kemetic perspective, there is one source. Think of God as an ocean of consciousness that is aware, energy that is aware. If the Creator is an entire ocean, then everything else in the universe, and we can come down to us, each one of us is essentially a drop in that ocean. That means that we are the ocean, okay, and a drop, and then the drop is in the ocean. We are it, just not the same magnitude. So from that perspective, we cannot be born sinful. We are divine, just as the Creator is.
I'm really excited to get into this conversation because, you mentioned religious trauma, which I think is a very juicy topic. It's controversial for some, it's sensitive for some, and it's very intriguing for others. As you said, like perspective, right? For me,
yes,
I'm all about it. I am all about it.
Yeah, and we can take it in many different directions. So I like to relate this stuff to real life too. So
good. I love that.
Energy, metaphysics. So let's roll with it.
Definitely. All right. So first, like, tell me about your upbringing. What was that like? How did the structure of your own religious upbringing shape your life?
So for me, I grew up and was born into a very staunch religious family. So I mean, my family was the type like the King James Bible that had the these and the thous. If
Oh
it didn't have
man.
these and thous, that wasn't a real Bible.
Oh my
so,
God.
so but I was raised in it. I was immersed in it in a very restrictive type of religious upbringing. So to this day, I don't have a whole lot of rhythm because dancing was like forbidden. So growing up, I wasn't supposed to dance. I wasn't supposed to listen to certain types of music, all that stuff. I mean, I still haven't even learned how to do the electric slide. That's how bad it is. so I have trouble with that.
Oh my God.
Okay. So that's the kind of upbringing I had. So the first like real question that I really had the nerve to ask my mother was about hell and why people would go to hell. So and I still to this day I remember this question. I said, Mom, I said, so Jewish people don't believe in Jesus as a savior. So if a Jewish person did good all their life and they were helpful. They were just a good person all their life, and then they died. You're telling me that they would go to hell, but a person that would be, say, like a mass murderer on their deathbed said that they accepted Jesus Christ into their life, they would go to heaven. And I said, is that how it would be? She just kind of said, yeah,
Oh my
that was it.
God.
And I was like, Kertia,
Wow.
that messed me up. I mean, I was just kind of like, that doesn't even like make sense or compute, you
Yeah.
know. So from that day forward, I kind of gave Christianity the side eye. When I'm in church, I'm kind of like, so that's the kind of and my mother was a type, and it used to make me so mad. She would not be on time for anything except going to church and opening that church door on Sunday.
Oh God.
So that was basically my upbringing. So at Christmas and Easter, not Christmas, but Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, all of our extended family would get together. And I had an uncle that when he said grace, it wasn't just grace, it was a sermon
Oh God, I know those
plus
ones.
grace. You know
I
those kind?
know those ones. I know those
Yeah.
ones. Yes.
So he was going to save you and bless the food at the same time.
Lord.
That was my family, okay?
Oh
Oh,
man. Oh yeah, you just brought back some memories. That's yeah. Totally get it. Totally get it.
yeah.
It's funny how all of this shapes us so much. Like the conditioning is so deep for your mom to not even pause to kind of take in what you were asking her, right? Because like I was
Yeah.
that child, like I started questioning things really early on. And for me, I felt like, well, if God is just this wrathful person, and if you don't do things right, you're going to go to hell. But at the same time, he's supposed to be like the most loving and the most caring and the most merciful and the most forgiving. I'm just like, that doesn't add up, because I know that if I had a child that did bad things, sure, I would want to hold them accountable for their actions, but I wouldn't want to torture them for eternity. And I'm like, well, if God is better than me and more loving than me and more forgiving and more merciful as me as just a human being, then if I wouldn't do that, why would God do that? That was my
Ooh,
reasoning,
we. Yes. And
right?
I came to that same place and same conclusion too, Kercher, that, if I had children, this was before I had children, but I thought to myself, there is nothing that my child could do that I would never forgive them for.
Yeah,
Nothing, you know? And so I had to ask, the next question was, if I could be benevolent enough to forgive my children, are you telling me that I would be more benevolent than God? You know?
exactly.
So
Exactly.
where you went to with that is the same place I went to with it.
Yeah, exactly. And just to your point, you know, going to church, especially around Christmas time, they will have like those plays and everything. And I remember this one church that I went to, and they had this play that kind of depicted how, if you did a bad thing, as long as you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you'd go to heaven. And I had the same thought, like, but what if I'm an atheist and I'm a really good human being and all I do is love people and pour into others? Why should I go to hell? But someone who has like completely lived their life in an unloving way, like they just say, well, I accept Jesus, and all of a sudden they're in heaven and I'm not. Like it just doesn't make sense. So like I really went back to it, like what you said just now made me go back to, even my own questioning at the time and what wasn't making sense to me. So I'd love to know now, when you were introduced to Kemetic principles, like how did that even come about? And I'd love to know, how did you first begin digesting that information? Because it's completely different from like any type of religious upbringing that anyone could have.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that, Kersha, is that the Kemetic principles are actually the foundation of where Christianity got their ideas.
Yeah.
Okay, so but where it happened for me, so by the time I got to college, I considered myself an atheist, and I ended up getting a basketball scholarship to actually a Bible college. Okay, and I went because of the scholarship, not for the Bible. but
Mm-hmm.
but I basically stayed in limbo for probably 20 years, in that sense, where I went from atheism to the idea, and it was more rebelling against the idea of this wrathful God. So it
Yeah.
wasn't that I didn't want spirituality, because at that point I hadn't separated spirituality and religion. Now I have. It's two different things.
Yeah.
But but I so when I started to it was things just started to happen for me after my life, after my divorce, which was, I had gotten married. I wanted my children to have a spiritual connection, so I actually went back to the church for a few
Mm.
years. But it ended up, it was just not palatable. I couldn't stay there. So moved forward. I got divorced for a few years. After divorce, I was dating. But all through this time, there were things that were happening in my life that either they weren't adding up, or they added up to something that basically made me the common denominator. And I knew that it wasn't, that it was something that was within me that was causing the issues. Okay.
Mm.
And
Mm.
in particular, dating. So women that I dated, I started to recognize that the same scenarios would happen in my relationships. They would, end up having the same type arguments, or the same type of women, and whatever. So that kind of made me start to think, like, wait a minute. Either these women that don't know each other have gotten together beforehand, and basically conspired to treat me a certain way,
Yeah.
or there is something about me that is choosing these type women.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Mm.
Well, I'm not, I never have considered myself a victim, so I had to recognize that I was the common denominator. Okay. So this is around probably 2004, 5. Around 2006, The Secret came out. So I'm leading up to how I came to Kemeticism. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Secret came out, and my brother, he was the one who introduced me to it. And it was kind of funny because he started talking about it, and he's like, "Man, have you heard about The Secret?" And I'm like, "No, man." I'm like, "What is it?" So he starts telling me all of this stuff, Kersher, and I'm like, "Dude, when in the hell are you going to tell me about The Secret? What is it?" you know I'm like, I'm getting kind of upset and perturbed. Come to
Yeah.
find out, he was telling me about the movie The Secret. I was waiting for him to tell me the big secret,
The secret.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted the secret. So
Oh man.
I would admit I was mad at him. But at any rate, but what The Secret ended up doing was giving me a new way to access metaphysical and spiritual concepts. Okay,
Mm.
a new way
Mm.
to access the ideas that I had felt when it came to dating these type women, and that was kind of one of my big things.
Yeah.
The idea that thoughts become things. Okay.
Mm. Yeah.
So I recognized that I was choosing women, the certain type of women, because of how I believed about myself. Okay.
Mm.
So my thoughts and my perspectives about myself was making me choose certain types of individuals to date. Okay.
Yeah.
So it helped me to confirm that. So the secret wasn't like a, oh my God. It was like, oh my God, this somebody's talking something that I already believe, and it gave me a way to think about it. Well, having grown up in the church, I didn't like the idea of just accepting what people told me. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was part of my church heritage where you just believe, you have
Oh,
faith
yeah.
and you accept. Okay. So few years move past, so I'm wanting to find out if this thoughts become things, is this really something real, or is it just, somebody just saying something, blah, blah, blah. And in that movie, they alluded to the Greeks having the secret. And well, I knew, and I had read a book many years ago called The Stolen Legacy by Asa Gilliard.
Mm.
And it basically laid out how the Greeks were taught by the Egyptians. Okay.
Yeah.
So that gave me, having remembered that, I started to research and went to starting to research ancient Egypt. And once I researched ancient Egypt, it led me to the ideas that became the law of what we know as law of attraction today. But it also answered questions about Christianity that I didn't even know could be answered.
Right.
Okay, so that's how I came to Kemeticism, and then later, over years of developing that, I developed it in the context of Kametaphysics, which is the idea of the ancient Egyptian soul. It's called the Ka, and then of course coupling with that metaphysics, because a lot of people, when you say Kemetic, they assume something um, historical, which
Mm.
had very little to do about the metaphysical ideas and the stuff that we call spiritual, that is really the transformative ideas that we use to develop ourselves personally and spiritually.
Yeah. Yeah. That is amazing, like going from one extreme to the next, like because your upbringing was very embedded in like a lot of dogma, a lot of dogmatic principles, and now being on the complete opposite side of that, that is really intriguing. I'd love to know, um, I'd love to know, right? You becoming aware of the Kemetic principles now.
Hmm.
Can you tell me like some of the particular aspects of those principles that now form the foundation of your own spirituality?
Yeah, yeah, and definitely, and it is something that, and this is something that I impart to others as well through what I teach. But I recognize that the Kemetic spiritual system had been distorted by Christianity. Okay,
Yeah.
and the way that they did that was to change spiritual concepts that were really a part of all of Africa and are a part of really most spiritual systems around the world. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
they distorted some ideas. One of the main ideas that they distorted was the idea that we're born sinful. Okay.
Oh,
That we're born
yeah.
sinful and in some way separate from the creator. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was a total 180 from the ancient teachings and any pretty much any ancient spiritual teachings before
Yeah, that's a
Christianity.
heavy one.
It
That is a
is. It
heavy one.
is.
Yeah.
And the idea that the first supposed parents of humanity were sinful, and because of their sin everybody else was sinful. I
Yeah.
mean, that's like it's a ridiculous idea, but
Yep.
uh, you know, we accepted it. We had faith. We just believed.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a Kemetic perspective, the ancient teachings were that there is one source and one essence of creation, of all of creation. Okay. And everything that has been created comes from that source.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the way I like to teach that is to use an analogy, because sometimes these ideas can be so abstract, they're just useless. But the idea, think of God. God is not a human being. Okay, so
Mm.
so that's another one of the things that they messed up. But think of God as an ocean of consciousness
Yeah.
that is aware, energy that is aware. Okay, just as an entire ocean. Well, if the creator is an entire ocean, then everything else in the universe, and we can come down to us, each one of us is essentially a drop in that ocean.
Yeah.
Okay. That means that we are the ocean, okay, in a drop, and then the drop is in the ocean. We are it, just not the
Yeah.
same magnitude.
Yeah.
Okay. So, from that perspective, we cannot be born sinful. We are divine just as the creator is. And that's an ancient African and Kemetic spiritual belief system, okay?
Yeah.
That we're all born divine. From a Christian perspective, to even say something like that is blasphemous. To
Mm-hmm.
equate ourselves with the creator is blasphemous.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it ends up creating a frame of negativity that allows beliefs of self-loathing, self-hate, looking at someone else as something other than God. That means
Yeah.
we can self-loathe and we can hate them. That's, to me, is the legacy of that type of a teaching.
Yeah. That is so true. It took me back to what you just said. It took me back to this thing that I questioned when I was younger. Whew. You saying, everything is of the creator. One of the things that I questioned was, well, you're taught that good and evil exists. You're taught of like good and bad. And I'm like, okay, well, like you learn about the devil, Satan, whatever anyone refers to it in their religion. And to me, I was like, even this concept, it didn't quite land for me. Like, I get it, but it didn't quite land because if the creator, if God is this person that created everything, even like the devil and whatever, I'm just like, well, then it kind of muddles the concept of good and bad and evil and all those things because he created this. If he's so perfect and we're the ones that we're sinful and we're this and we're that, well, he created us.
Exactly.
And he also created this being. And I think the way that it is usually spawned to kind of justify the contradiction is that the devil betrayed God. Like the devil was an angel and he's a fallen angel because he betrayed God. And I'm just like, yeah, but he's still God's creation regardless.
Bingo. Yeah.
So he's still off God. So
Yeah.
then why? And then God allows this being to tempt all of us to test our love and obedience to him to see who he will save and who he will burn. I'm just like, that is weird.
Yeah.
This is
Why
weird.
create this? Why create this being? And ultimately, what it seemed like to me, Kershaw, was God created something He couldn't even control.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's just like, well, then essentially God is also the creator of the bad things. Because if God can
Yes.
create the good things, then he equally created the bad things because it is his own creation that so called betrayed him, right? And became, like rogue and now wants to tempt everyone so that we can all be on his side and do the bad things. But it's still God creation. It doesn't change that fact. So if he creates good, then he equally creates bad, right?
Correct.
So like this concept of God, like this was my questioning for many years growing up. And it always came back to the same thing. Like it's not adding up. It's not making sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
like referring to the creator, the source as an ocean and us just all being droplets of that. It's very true. And like everything that is created is of that, regardless of however you want to look at it, because we are equal creators in everything that exists. We are co-creators of everything and we are of that source. So
Yes.
definitely love the way that you explained that to put things into perspective, because I think that was one of like the things that I battled with a lot growing up, like with Christian principles. My family wasn't super Christian, but like they made me go to church, like they will send me to church sometime on Sundays with an adult. And I went to Catholic school, in Jamaica. We have a lot of Catholic schools. So I went to Catholic school for most of my upbringing. So, like, those principles were always kind of just like imposed on your
Yeah.
psyche. And, like, as you said, like, it's definitely a lot of conditioning, a lot of, I guess, like, you're pretty much taught to give your power away.
Yep. Yep. No, absolutely. And that's when and see, even those questions like that are answered in from Kemetaphysics perspective, and just the idea of Satan and God. Okay,
Yeah.
and it is a to me it is a much more palatable uh, experience, and a much more palatable philosophically, because the from the Kemetic perspective, the idea that we know as Satan today started from the concept of Set. Okay, just the word ST with the E put in the middle.
Yeah.
But from a Kemetic perspective, Set was not evil. Set was simply opposition. Okay, so put this in the context of life. We want to go for a promotion, or we want to go open a business, or we want to go and do something that excuse me, we want to go and do something that we had not done before. And just think of, on the as the saying goes, on the other side of fear is what you want, you know. So
Mm.
in this context, set the fear is the opposition.
Hmm.
Okay, even from the word Satan, the word set became the word Satan in Hebrew. Satan simply means adversary,
Mm.
not something evil.
Yeah.
So those things that we fear, or those things that we struggle with, becomes our adversary or our opposition. That to me is a much more empowering idea, because then it brings it back that you are the one that can overcome the fear, and you are the one who can decide how you're going to deal with that opposition, not
Yeah.
that there's some entity outside of you pulling all the strings or deciding for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like thinking of how religion teaches you, like, not only that you need a middle person in order to get to God, but then there was that aspect of that alone was disempowering. But then the other aspect of the idea behind Satan or the devil, it also, because I've lost count of how many times I've heard a Christian blame the devil for the things that they
Yep.
do or the things
Yep.
that has happened to them. And then it becomes also disempowering, because now you're not even holding yourself accountable. Now you have
Bingo.
something external to you to blame for your behavior or to blame for your
Yes.
problems, because like I've literally heard people, after they did something that was not nice, they will be like, "Oh, it was the devil. It was the
Yep.
devil's work."
The devil
And I'm
made me
just
do it.
like, "Bruh."
Yeah, right. No, that wasn't the devil. That was you. Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh my gosh.
No,
I'm
and Kirsch, it's interesting, because even my 15-year-old son, this is what he told me when he was 15. Says, Dad, he says the devil is simply somebody's excuse not to take responsibility for their own actions.
literally.
Literally.
Oh my gosh. Listen to your son. So wise
At
already.
15, that was his words to me. And I was like, wow, you know, but he hit it right on the head, you know,
Yeah.
and it does disempower us in a way that we, because I think a lot of times one of the things that how I now look at spirituality and religion, so they're because they are two different things, two different constructs. But if you wanted to just size up the difference, religion is the idea that your power is outside of you,
Yes.
that you have to form a relationship to it, that something outside of you is going to give you the okay or give you the thumbs down,
Yeah.
one or the other. Okay. So your whole life is spent trying to live in a way that placates that outside being, that makes you okay in relation to that outside being. Okay. Spirituality, and that's what psychologists call an external locus of control. So
Yeah.
whatever is controlling you is outside of you. Spirituality, on the other hand, and Kemetic spirituality, and most spiritual systems, so whether it's Kemeticism or not, most spiritual systems develop the idea that you are internally. It is an internal journey to really recognize the divinity within you.
Yeah.
It is an internal journey to reconcile life and what is happening as happening through you, not to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That to me is a much more empowering perspective because, one, it gives you the ability to self correct, but it also empowers you to know that you have the power to self correct.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where it comes into the law of attraction ideas really come into play here, because it is based in the concept of ma'at and the ideas of truth, balance, and reciprocity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But each one of those words are like a tip of the iceberg to other principles and deeper principles, because ma'at is symbolized as a feminine netter. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this, even the symbolic system, helps you to understand the teachings deeper, because a lot of us are taught that divine feminine is about something about being a woman. Okay.
Yeah.
But from a Kemetic perspective, divine feminine is about function, not gender.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is what I mean by that, is that divine feminine is an aspect of all of us, because it is about our internal environment, our intuition, okay, our mind, our thoughts, our beliefs. Those are all something that is inside of us. And ma'at as truth, okay, the tip of the iceberg thing about that is that if what is inside of us is truth, then it is our internal perspective that is our truth.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means that what is true is subjective to us.
Mm-hmm.
That was a powerful realization for me,
Yeah. Wow.
because it meant, and it explains why two people can look, or two people can grow up in the same household and have two completely different experiences of that household.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah, so their truths are different. and
Yeah.
and one of the ways that I like to use an example, again, as a an analogy, is have two people face each other. Okay, so they can come and they can stand, a couple of feet apart, face each other, and then tell each person to point and look to the right, and then describe what they see. Now, when that happens, both of them are going to be looking in two different directions,
Mm-hmm.
but each one of them are going to be telling the truth about what they see and experience.
Yes.
So, from an ancient Kemetic perspective, all truths are half true.
Absolutely. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So,
There are
that in
many
itself becomes
truths.
very powerful.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that,
Yeah.
Reginald. You know, earlier in our conversation, you said that, when you were talking about your relationships with women, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that you're kind of like on this spiritual journey, now that you've kind of like done away with a lot of, or at least maybe even still working through a lot of the religious conditioning right now to lean more into spiritual principles, I'd love to know now, what does your relationship look like with yourself? Because as you said earlier, the relationships that we have with people and however those relationship looks really comes down back to one thing, and it comes back to the relationship that we have with ourselves first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you 100%, that is very true. And I've developed a relationship with myself that I can be appreciative of who I am. And I like to say that for a long time growing up, I felt like I was cursed in that area,
Mm,
because I could always recognize the good and the gifts that other people had. But when it came to me looking at myself, I was blind to any gifts that I had,
mm,
you know.
mm.
And I think that a lot of that was just from the idea that I was taught that to even say anything good about myself was being prideful and arrogant,
Oh yeah, there's that
you know.
too.
Yeah. So I couldn't even allow myself to think something good about me, you know. And I think that impacted my relationships in this way, is that because I couldn't recognize the good in myself, then I chose relationships where people had to validate that for me, or I wanted them to validate that for me.
Yeah.
But the way that they validated that for me was I had to feel needed as a man.
Mm, mm,
Okay. So if I couldn't even choose a confident and a self-sufficient woman, the types of women that I chose then were women that were emotionally needy,
mhm,
that needed an emotional trash can, because
mhm,
that's how I saw myself, as only being valuable in their life.
mm.
Okay. So that relationship that I had to myself, that had to change. Okay. That
Yeah.
belief that I was only valuable if somebody needed me. Okay. That had to change. And honestly, I'm still working on all of that. So, you
Aren't
know,
we all?
there,
Aren't we all?
it's a constant, give and take pool. So I recognize it, and now that I recognize it, I can diagnose it, and once I diagnose it, I can start to do things to work on it. But the funny thing about relationships is a lot. I hear a lot of people say, "Well, when I fix this in myself, then I'll get into a relationship."
Yeah.
The reality is there's some things that only a relationship is going to bring out of you.
Mhm.
So try to fix yourself to be in a relationship and never be in one. There are things that you're just never ever going to be able to. Those things are never going to come up for you to fix, because it's only
Exactly.
with when we are relating that those things are going to come up, and that they end up being the mirror for you to see
Right.
what you need to fix.
Right. Right. Exactly that. Exactly that, Reginald. That is so true. Like we are all mirrors of each other. And it's in relation with each other that we get to learn about ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we when we think of ourselves as victims, we point fingers at everybody.
Mhm.
you know I could have easily, and for a while I guess I was, after my divorce, I was bitter, because I felt like I was a good man. I had did everything I was supposed to do, but
Mm.
this woman didn't want to be with me anymore. So
Yeah.
that hurt like hell. you know,
Oh yeah.
uh, and for a while I was bitter, but at some point, in order to reconcile and bring peace within yourself, you have to take responsibility for the stuff that you've done, and you have to take responsibility for the things that you've created in those relationships. Because no matter what, it takes two people to be in the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and both people create it and co-create that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And just going back to, when you talk about religious conditioning, we already have um the conditioning that our own parents have just from ancestral conditioning, generational conditioning. There's that. And then when you add the religious framework onto all of that, you know, like for example, like some of the conditioning that I received as a child made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I wasn't worthy. And that is separate from religion, right? That was just generational, familial stuff, right? And then now when you add the religious framework onto that, it kind of embeds that even more, like the not being worthy enough, not being enough, because the religion from what I feel from what we've been taught in church or in Sunday school or what have you, whatever religion that you're associated with, is that you always have to prove yourself to the
Yep.
creator. You're always in um this cycle of trying to prove your worth, trying to prove that you're enough, trying to prove that you're deserving. You have to be good or you're going to go to hell. You have to be good or you're bad. Like you have to do these things and obey these things, or you're a bad girl or you're a bad boy, or you're going to suffer for it because you did the bad thing. You did what you weren't supposed to do, right? So now it becomes like this constant thing whereby even if you have a very human moment and just, make a make a mistake, or just you're just on this learning curve, like no one gets through life without doing things that might be considered hurtful or mean, whether it be intentional or not. Like this is just a part of the human experience, right? Because we
Yes.
have to deal with our emotions. And sometimes, like, first of all, we weren't taught how to emotionally regulate. So yeah, a lot of the things that we do might look messy sometimes. And when you have this framework that's telling you that you're a bad person for having certain experiences or for showing up in
Mm-hmm.
a certain way, then it's just like now you're in this constant cycle of you're just never enough. You're just never worthy because you always have to prove yourself, right? And of course, for
Mm-hmm.
someone like me who's always been questioning, that framework didn't affect me as heavily as I know that it probably affected maybe some of my other friends who, like, they were like, their families are like really devout Christians and they had to follow all the rules and do all the things. And because I remember even questioning some of those friends, like, they would tell me, like, like it's not good to question or to think like that, and just listen to what the pastor said and they will have a better interpretation. and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, well, my interpretation seems just fine to me, right?
Right. Right.
So like there is like that, like it's hard enough being a human being and try to figure life out, when you have the societal conditioning, the cultural conditioning, the familial conditioning, all of those things, the relational programming that we have just from like being situated in a certain culture or
Yep.
family or
Mm-hmm.
society. And then you add the religion onto that, and it's just like No wonder why we look like, like the world kind of look the way it looks, because we're all just confused people.
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy. Like we're so confused, so disconnected from our true power. And a lot
Bingo.
of us, yeah, and we literally walk around being so disconnected, so disempowered, and then we just go and just project that everywhere. So,
Yep, yep.
yeah.
Nope, that's exactly it. And you hit on a number of things there. Just because I the way I see it is how to me, I think religion, having grown up the way that I did, religion frames essentially everything for me and my family, and I think that it also frames a lot of ideas that we even live with in our country, our communities, whatever. I a lot of times
Yeah.
I don't think people recognize how big of a pull these ideas are, because
Yeah.
if you think about it, so I grew up in a church where on Sunday I was told that I was unworthy. Okay, I was a wretch. I was nothing without God. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
these were the kind of messages that we ingested every Sunday
As children, imagine that.
as children. But Kershaw, those messages are taken into life as well, and I
Yeah.
think for me, there is a connection to a lot of times to I know there is a connection to disease and these beliefs. Okay,
Yeah.
for example, the and I just think about women and how women are treated, in the churches a lot of times, not only in churches but just is as an extension in our society. Women a lot of times have been viewed as second class citizens. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of that was the underpinning of that was because of religious beliefs.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
you know, so women have been taught that their worthiness comes from doing service.
Mm-hmm.
And not only do you do service, you got to put yourself to the side.
You gotta
And even if
sacrifice.
you think, yes, you got to sacrifice, and even if you think and consider that you are supposed to be first, you're being selfish.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these ideas are connected to that framework. And even when you talk about diseases like, and I can think about autoimmune diseases, though there's
Yeah.
supposed to be, probably 80 different autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases means that your immune system is attacking you. For me, I look at that from a symbolic perspective. That even on an energetic level, when you are giving your power away, your system, your own internal system, can't recognize you because you're not even living authentically. So your
Yeah.
system essentially attacks you from within. But
Yeah.
it's not attacking you, it's trying to bring things into balance. And it does that by saying the disease manifests itself and is trying to help you say, wait a minute, this disease is happening to me. I need to look at it and go like, what's going on here? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a signal instead, and a lot of us think of it as an attack because if we're sick or ill or something like that, we've been taught that maybe God is punishing us, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's a curse. But from
Mm-hmm.
a Kemetic perspective, if you are divine, it's not a curse; it becomes a signal, and it becomes a
Yeah.
wake up call. You know, and I like to use the idea of an analogy as dreams and nightmares, because dreams and nightmares are very powerful when you can understand that they are therapeutic first. Okay,
Mm.
because if you think about it, your body is going to react to something mentally just as it did if it was something out there that you were reacting to.
Mm-hmm.
Dreams and nightmares are going to chemically cause you to react. A nightmare is essentially a dream that has been ramped up, that is a signal from your soul that, hey, you need to pay attention to this. And if
Mm-hmm.
you don't pay attention to it first, then it's going to ramp up as a nightmare. So you can go like, oh, what was that? What was that about? You wake up, maybe in a cold sweat. Well, that wake up call, okay, makes you turn within to pay attention to how you're living. And if it keeps happening to where you stay disconnected, then it can manifest as a disease. And the
Yeah.
disease is even more of a call to say, hey, pay attention to this. You have to fix something up here and in here so that you can fix the disease and what's happening to you. So to me, all of that frame, Kersha, it's all connected. And a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
times our religious beliefs disconnect us from our own internal guidance system.
Exactly that. Exactly that. And then it becomes reflected back into our environment, into our
Bingo.
relationships, right? So
Because our relationships are signals, they are feedback. Life and what happens out there from a Kemetic perspective, this is the idea of ma'at and reciprocity. That what is within you is projected as life, and what is life is feedback for you to recognize what is happening within you. It's all connected.
literally, yeah. You said that so well because, I was having a conversation the other day and, you know, I was like, the thing with people is we often look on how we can change the world outside of us and how we can stop the wars and have world peace and feed the poor and all of those things. And I was just like, well, it goes back to you, right? Everything that we see reflected in the world, we created that. We co-created all of this.
Yep.
So there's no point in being so wrapped up in the news and what's happening in the wars and all those things. You can have compassion for it, but not be so wrapped up in it, because the true change that needs to be happening is a change inside of yourself.
Beautifully
Because
said.
for example, we have the protests and we have all those things, and it's okay, it's great, but the protests can help in whatever it's supposed to do, and the advocacy and all those things is great. It's amazing that we have people doing work on the ground, but the true change really does start with you as an individual.
Be
Because
the change you want
when
to see
you
in the world.
exactly, when you look at it, what is happening, even though you're not the one that's like landing a bomb on someone's head, even though you're not the one that's um destroying families by murdering people, even though you're not the politician that's making policies that's wreaking havoc in people's lives, we are all co-signers to some
Yep.
aspect as to what's happening. And
Co-creators.
when
Yep.
you're allowing yourself, when you give your power away to an external force, this is how things like this become possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you are so wrapped up in the fear and the anxiety that these external forces are creating, when you're reacting to it, when you're responding to that, and when you give into that, you're giving your power away. And the more you do that, the more you give your power away, the more these things begin to manifest. But when you can
Yep.
create that change within yourself and recognize the power that you have, when you're no longer responding to all of these external manipulations and the fears and anxiety that they're projecting, when you're no longer responding to that in a certain way, they will be forced to shift. So
Bingo.
the true solution happens with you first. And then when you shift,
Ooh-wee.
your environment it will have no other choice but to shift too.
Oh, Kertia, that is so beautiful and powerful what you just spoke. And I like to take what you just said and put it in the context of how Kemetic teachings and how the ancient teachings taught that idea, is
Mm-hmm.
that what you're saying to me is that first of all of us are connected. So we're
Yes.
all that ocean. Okay, we're all in that ocean together. That ocean of consciousness gathers certain energies that we do co-create with.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you stay tapped into the negativity, you're essentially uploading that vibrational essence to up into consciousness. And then whoever is on your same wavelength is going to download or tap into that energy. So when you want to change, and this is where the saying, be the change that you want to see in the world,
Mm-hmm.
the protests are a way, as an example of saying I don't like this.
Yeah.
That's a way that people can gather, with that energy and say I don't like this. Another way is to consciously reconcile and be at peace and allow people to experience life as they decide and they want, because ultimately we can't know why another soul has incarnated to be here. We don't
Yeah.
know what their life lesson is going to be or supposed to be. So it's kind of like we a lot of times we want to try to dictate how somebody experiences life, and we really can't. All we can do is take care of what's within us. But when
Yeah.
we upload the peace, the stillness, the joy, and we live life from that perspective, then we kind of set an umbrella of consciousness that other people can get inside and get under and download and become that as well.
Yes. Exactly
Wars would
that.
be
Exactly
eliminated,
that.
you know?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And it's
So
so
very
true.
powerful what you said. It is very powerful. So it's not what we say or do, it's who we are. It's who
Mm-hmm.
we are as a being, vibrationally and consciously, that really changes the world.
Exactly. Exactly. Like we can get out and protest and do all the things, but it really begins with us, and like, yeah, the protests and all those things, it does help, as you say, to bring attention, or to for someone to see like there is a wound here that needs to be healed.
Yes.
But the true solution starts with you as an individual, right? For you to take your power back, where your mind and where your heart is situation, that is where the true
Yep.
solution begins. The protest is a tool. The protest
Bingo.
isn't the real solution. It is a tool. And sometimes that tool is
It's a
meant to,
symbol.
exactly, it's a symbol that there's a wound, that there is something wrong. And it can also be as a tool for some people to kind of shake them up, because some of us need to shake up to wake up.
Yes.
So
Yes.
like,
No.
that's
No,
what
go
it's
ahead.
for.
Go ahead.
It's all a tool. Like, all these advocacies and stuff, like, they're amazing, but they're tools, right? The real solution always comes back to your heart, always come back to you being so connected and so centered in yourself, that, as you said, like, you recognize your connection to everyone and everything. You recognize that God within you. You recognize that all of this is connected, and we're
Yeah.
all co creating together.
Yes. And you recognize and you build and bring that peace within yourself. When you
Yeah.
bring that peace, you upload that to the collective. You upload who you are to the collective. So the way I look at the protests and stuff like that is that they're just like disease. Disease is a symbolic representation of your inner being. Okay. A protest can be an extension of that thing. It can be a symbolic extension just in another way.
Yeah.
The unrest that is within you manifests as that protest, and that's something that a person can connect with. So there's
Hmm.
many different ways that and many different nuances in which this energy can manifest. but it is
Yes.
always a tool and a reflection of what is within you. When you change what
Yes.
is within you, out there will change.
Yes. 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 Yes, Reginald. Definitely. I'd love for you to tell me more about Kemetaphysics and your approach with that. I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, and it's just for me, Kershaw, it's just like in the context of our conversation here. You know, this is what I'm speaking, and what I and even what I'm hearing for you from you is how I live these ideas. You know, because they are alive. They are not in church. And I have to use church a lot of times as a contrast, you know, just to understand the idea. But
Yeah.
church, we would, you know, hoop and holler and do what we did on Sunday. But then on Monday, you go and live the same life that you lived before.
Mm. Yeah.
Nothing changes, you know? But a big reason why that happened is because a lot of the ideas were absolute impossibilities to live, and because a lot of times they were just simply contradictions that we couldn't even reconcile within ourselves. So we
Yeah.
just said, forget it. You know, I'll fake it on Sunday, but then I'm going to go and do what I do Monday through Saturday. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
so that's what it has. But from a Kemetic perspective, these ideas inform your life. They become an extension of you, you know? And it's not exchanging one belief system for another, because I think that's a lot of times when people hear that Christianity came out of these ideas, their first thought is I don't want to be Christian. You know, I don't want to do that
Mm-hmm.
again. And I absolutely agree. But the difference is again, religion is about an external locus of control.
Yeah.
When you turn within and you become a sovereign soul, you know, which is what, you know, my newsletter is called, the Sovereign Soul Collective. When you become a sovereign soul, you are taking your own power back. You become the standard for your life rather than somebody else telling you how to live life.
Mm.
That to me is a whole lot more empowering, and that's where, even with the Kemetic ideas, it can live alongside anything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But from a religious perspective, it can't stand alongside the dogma. And when people try to dictate the dogma, there is nothing that can stand alongside of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Absolutely.
So these ideas
Absolutely.
are living, and they're living through us. They're living through us as co-creators, you know, of this world and of this life and of our life, you know.
Yeah.
And to me, the more the idea of ma'at and living ma'at is the idea of being in balance and being in peace and being in harmony. And if you're living a life that does not bring those things to you, then you need to ask the question why. And if something is happening that is not bringing that peace, then that's, again, it's a signal that something needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
Something in here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when it does, it brings you peace and balance. That's the goal. Live
Yeah.
through your joy, live through your peace, live through your balance, create life on your terms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You're right on point. So, with we spoke about so many like layers of this whole religious, conversation, and how it kind of like kept us so disconnected from ourselves. I'd love to know, like, what is your, the work that you're doing right now, like how are people now responding to, because I feel like people are beginning to wake up. I feel like so much has happened in the world, like as I said earlier, like when you look at the protests and the advocacy against the things that are happening, like, these things are tools to show us that something is wrong. Like it is it is a symptom of the disease that is happening. in society, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like sometimes we need, like, and it sounds bad, but like when you look at kids dying and it's terrible, but then sometimes some of us do need that in order to
Yep.
wake up. You know,
Yep.
that's the thing. Some of us
Yep.
need to see that. Some of us need to experience that
And
in
some of
order
those
for us to
kids
wake up.
incarnate, yes, and some
In
of those
order to
kids
do that,
incarnate to do that to us.
exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
As you said before, like, we cannot dictate someone else's life and what happens to someone else and what happens with someone else or the choices that other people make, because some people do incarnate to take on these roles that might be difficult for some of us to
Yes.
reconcile with. And that is just
Yes.
the reality of life. So I'd love to know, like, so I don't think it's all gloom and doom, even though it feels like it and looks like it. But I love to think now, you as a spiritual educator, what is it like for you? How do you see people responding to the work that you're doing right now?
Yeah, and it just depends on the people. And what I like to do is just I put out the message and let the people make their decision, and that's kind of the way I handle this because my children taught me a lesson very early is that I can't
Mm,
force my beliefs on somebody else, no matter what it is, no
right.
matter how good I think that they are, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
I had to let them be, I had to let them live their life. And it's the same way I handle these teachings is that one of the things that I teach is to follow your joy. Let joy be your guide. Let that joy
Mm,
that is within you light your path. Because there is a calibration that happens when you are calibrated and on purpose, on path to what your soul is wanting. You are in joy and in peace. Okay?
yeah.
You are aligned with your soul then. When you're misaligned is when you are feeling all the other stuff, the opposite of that. Okay. So when I tell people that for me, teaching these ideas is just simply me explaining and expressing something that I'm joyful about. Whether
Mm,
somebody wants to accept it or not, that's not my job really. But
yeah.
I can be a conduit for somebody figuring something out. I can help them along their path if they choose these ideas, you know. And a lot of times people have asked me, well, how do I know this stuff is true? How do you know if anything is true?
Mm-hmm.
You know if something is true by how it impacts and affects you.
Mm-hmm.
So if something to me, it is true when it brings me peace and harmony within.
Yeah.
That's my sole criteria for whether it is true or not. What does it do for me? How does it make me feel? And even
Oh
if it
yeah.
doesn't bring me peace, if something brings me anger or whatever, that's what's true for me in the context of whatever that experience is.
Mm-hmm.
But that inner it is that inner guidance system to me that I simply look at really simplifying the idea of are you living through joy, peace, and harmony, or are you living something that is the opposite? If you're living the
Mm,
opposite, then that is a signal that there needs to be something that is different, something that is
yeah.
different in you. And a lot of times, what will keep us in those, say, in a job we hate, is our fears. The fears that I won't be able to pay my bills.
Yeah.
The fears that people will look at me funny. All of this stuff. All those fears become a reason why we don't go on the path of what brings us joy, even when we know that it would. We stay stuck over here, in
Mm-hmm.
those fears. So that to me is like that is again is part of the journey is how do I reconcile that? And then am really if you're going to live life on your terms, and that's another thing I would say you live life on your terms without fear, guilt, or shame. A lot of times it takes courage to do that.
Yeah.
It takes courage to not live the way society expects you to.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't want to hear what's wrong with him, what's wrong with her. We don't want to hear that
Yeah.
stuff, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people. But after a while, you're like, I don't care what they say. I'm going to do me and I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. This conversation is so good. So good. Okay, I have one fun question for you.
Sure.
What do you think about aliens?
They're real. They exist.
Any thoughts you'd like to share?
Sure, sure. So, and anyway, all these questions are fun for me, Kertia. So,
I mean, they're
I
all fun
love
for me.
discussing this stuff.
They're all fun for me too, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just wanted to
This,
throw that
this
in there.
this is the spice of life for me. But this is how I look at that, Kertia, and aliens. Okay, we have billions of galaxies and trillions of stars. What are the odds that we are the only beings living in this whole magnificent galaxy or this whole magnificent universe? What are the odds of that?
That's
I think that
crazy.
it is to think that we could be the only ones. To me, that
Yeah.
is so arrogant and so self-centered. It is
Yeah.
unfathomable. I can't even hardly say that word,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, to me, there has to be aliens, okay? And not only that, there has to be different dimensions that have different levels of existence.
Mm-hmm.
But we can connect to all of that from within us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our dreams of
Yeah.
being in other worlds are literally us experiencing those other worlds.
Yes.
Our imagination of aliens. Imagination is not hallucination, it's a portal.
Mm-hmm.
So you opened up a
Yes.
can of worms with that question.
Yes.
So, yeah, so even past lives and all that stuff is not past, it's now.
Mm-hmm.
We can't even imagine something that is not now. It's just a different perspective of now. Even a past life, it's a different perspective of an aspect of you that is now.
Yeah.
And the communication between those levels is not a closed loop. We can download because the way I look at it is even with past lives, we live through themes of experience
Mm-hmm.
because our lives are going to be grouped around certain energies and certain experiences.
Yeah.
So a past life, you might have lived a certain theme that you can carry over into another life until you
Mm-hmm.
reconcile it.
Mm-hmm.
But while both of those lives exist, y'all communicate with each other. Okay, you might get an intuitive download of something that other life or that even that future aspect of you is dealing with. You can get a download from that and how you can solve something now. All of that
Yeah.
is always a constant interplay. To
Yeah.
me, that's what the idea of really understanding your Christhood is that you have the ability to go within and tap in and experience all these different flavors that is the universe. You are it in human form.
Yes. Yes.
Woo, I
Oh
said
yeah.
something then.
Oh my God. This is so good. And like while you're the piece about imagination as being a portal, it's everything you said is true. And like if you can imagine something, it's real.
It's
you
real.
know People tell kids, like like when you're a kid and you're thinking about something and your parents just like, oh, it's just your imagination, or even other adults tell you it's just your imagination, as if it's something that it's like unreal, like it's fake,
It's
or like
not realistic.
it's not realistic. And that is the realest thing that we can tap into. Our imaginations are so real. Like the information and where that information is coming from, it's coming from a real place. You
Yes,
you can't
absolutely.
make up something that doesn't already exist.
You cannot. Absolutely. And I think about in this context, and this again, I just like to make it real, or bring it into a context that most people can understand. Is that think of like people who are historical fiction writers, and they
Hmm.
write some really beautiful and powerful historical fiction. They write that because they are able to tap into something that is an aspect of them that
Exactly.
they experience. That's why they
Yeah.
can bring it to us in a way that is so palatable and is so just so real.
Yeah.
We experience all of that stuff. It's
Yeah.
within us.
Yep. Exactly. Oh, yeah. This is a fun conversation. Thank
Well,
you
thank you. I'm
so
having
much,
fun too.
Reginald. Yeah, thank you so much. You really answered my questions in such an amazing, grounded way. Um, that definitely gave such a beautiful perspective to our experience as human beings and what it is like to truly be in touch with our own internal compass, with our power, what it truly means to be empowered, right? And although, like, the base and foundation, this is not to bash religion. The base and foundation of every religion started from something really beautiful, started from
Yes.
this concept of love, and started from this concept of being so empowered. Like, you know, there are verses still in the Bible where literally Jesus is saying, like, whatever he can do, that we can do the same thing.
Bingo.
So there
Bingo.
are still some golden nuggets of love and empowerment there. But of course, it has been so much overshadowed by a lot of the things that were
The
put
dogma.
there, yeah, to mislead us and to
Yeah.
take our power away. So, the foundation of religions really started from something so loving and so nurturing. So, this is not like anything to bash religion, but to really put things into perspective, into,
To reclaim that beauty. That's what it's about
yeah.
for me.
And even like allow you to question, like let you know, like it's okay to question. There is nothing wrong with questioning. If something doesn't make sense to you, there is a reason why it doesn't make sense to you. Just like none of this made sense to me, as a young child. Like it just didn't add up. The contradictions were there. And, I was open enough to question those contradictions. So, if there is something within you that makes you question something, or feels like, it doesn't feel like it gives you peace in your heart, then take that question as deep as you can take it and see what
Yes.
answer you come up with, see what you find. But as you said, everything is already within us, right? So,
Already.
yes, it's just about
Already.
connecting and reclaiming your own power. And yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it's all
And then
about.
having the confidence to validate your own experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people deal with, Kershaw, is that they're not able to validate their own internal experience for themselves. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of times we look for agreement, you know, and
True.
sometimes there are experiences that we have within ourselves that nobody else can have. There
Mm-hmm.
is knowledge and information that you can tap into that I can't, just simply because of you being you and where you are in your life, you
Mm-hmm.
know? That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't invalidate my experience. It just means that I have something
Exactly.
different, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But we have to be confident enough. And to me, that's really what a lot of what I'm teaching comes down to is we have to break the frame that has told us that we're something negative, that something's wrong with us, that we're broken. We have to
Mm.
break that frame because we are the perfect representation of the creator in this moment right now.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yes,
We are
yes,
perfection being expressed and experiencing the experiencing life.
yes, yes, Reginald. Exactly. Yeah. So, is there, anything else about what you're working on right now that you'd like to share? I know you authored a book,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'd love to know like what we can expect from that, and also like anything else that you're working on that you'd like to tell us about.
Sure, sure. Yeah, my book, and I wrote that book a couple of years ago, and it is the Egyptian origins of the ancient Egyptian origins of the Christ, of Jesus. Okay,
Mm.
is essentially what the title is. I'm can't think of it right offhand,
Yeah.
but basically that book, what I do, because a lot of people they want the thing that Christianity did that made the religion what it is that they move the idea of the Christ from within us to something
Mm.
outside of us that we are to worship. Okay.
Yep.
So to me, to heal that is we have to recognize and go back to the ancient concepts. So in that book, I actually take a person and take them step by step to show them that the Christ was not originally a human individual. They were concepts that were supposed to be a part of us. What we've been
Mm-hmm.
taught is this one amazing person that we were supposed to worship is actually about all of us as humanity altogether.
Mm-hmm.
It's aspects of us. So that's what I do, and I break down and I go down and I break that down from a symbolic perspective, a philosophical perspective, and show you and bring back the ancient teachings for you.
Mm.
Okay. The other thing that I'm doing now is I have my newsletter that I've started. I had a YouTube channel that I had was called Kametaphysics Sacred Alchemy, and I had built that channel to like 110,000 subscribers, over
Mm.
110,000 subscribers. But
Amazing.
it got to be to where I just didn't feel like it wasn't serving me through my joy anymore. I felt obligated to do a lot of things, and it got to be where um, YouTube just didn't serve my audience anymore.
Mm.
So I essentially just walked away from it. The channel is still there. I'll leave the videos there because they're a good repository. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing my Soul Sovereign Collective newsletter on us on the Substack platform, and this is where I now I write and I'll do videos and stuff too at times, but I write and teach a lot of these ideas, and that in a sense becomes a portal for everything that I do, whether it be my classes and courses that I do. I have a certification program with these Kemetic ideas for anybody, but and then even just helping people. There are a lot of times, just like we are waking up,
Mm.
there's a lot of preachers and stuff that are waking up too, and they don't know what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
They don't know where to go, you know. And so I give them knowledge and information to where, because a lot of times the way that they look at it, they feel like they have to quit what they're doing in order to, to move on. And
Yeah.
but what I'm doing is helping them to reframe these ideas to where they can still be in their pulpit and teach, but it's from a more empowered perspective, you know. So a lot of different
Yeah.
things. But if a person wants to connect with me immediately, go to reginaldmartin.substack.com, and that's where they can kind of get to a portal to everything that I do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you also mentioned preachers. I noticed that there is a shift in how some people are preaching now, and I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. Like back in the day, like what you're saying would be considered blasphemy,
Oh,
you
absolutely. It
know?
still is for a lot of for Christians.
And it still is for a lot of Christians and for a lot of preachers, but it's just seeing the change in like, like when you see it in one individual, then in two, then in three, you're like, oh wow, like something is shifting, right? Because before, like you didn't really experience that at all, right?
Right.
Everyone was kind of like going with the same script, and anyone who veered off path was considered, like,
A heretic.
yeah, literally. So
Yeah.
now seeing it, I've heard a couple of preachers who are now preaching about consciousness, and really having a lot of spiritual concepts into what they're teaching in church. And I will, like, it kind of like blew my mind a bit, and it made me
Yeah.
really, really, really pleased, and I love to see that. So I can only imagine, how much harder it is when you grew up embedded in the religious upbringing, and you become a preacher, a pastor, or a priest, or whatever, and then you begin to at some point shift to see things differently. that's
Yeah.
that's tough.
Well,
That's
and you have
really
to think
tough.
too, Kershaw, a lot of them, their livelihood is tied to their beliefs.
Yeah, yeah.
So if they change their beliefs, their livelihood can be gone
It's cut
overnight.
off.
That is a struggle for many of them.
Yeah.
For many of them, that's a huge struggle. And I don't condemn that. I know, I've had preachers that have come through my courses and classes, and some of them just like, well, forget it. I'm just going to teach what I'm going to teach. But their congregation ends up walking away, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But these ideas are so beautiful that you can frame them in a way that you don't have to lose your congregation.
Mm-hmm.
You can still talk about the Christ, but you can put it in the context of it. It is more about connecting it to their inner journey.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have stuff that I actually created to help them shift that language. But it is
Mm-hmm.
to help them because I know what it feels like to be doing something that you just really don't love and like anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to teach those ideas and that literal stuff, the dogma doesn't fit with them anymore. But it's like they don't feel like they have a choice. And that's where I was saying earlier, we can be in a job that we hate when our
Mm-hmm.
joy is over here.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened to a lot of them. And a lot of them are recognizing too that people are just leaving. Virtual
Mm-hmm.
people are walking away from religion, that dogmatic religion. But a lot of times what I see that they don't recognize is that all those people are not just walking away from religion, they're walking away from the dogma. And the
Yeah.
message that they may be already evolving into is the person that they're looking to hear from.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Perfectly said. Perfectly said. It's yeah. It's not even about doing away with religion. It's the dogma.
Yes.
It's the dogma. It's the lack of power. It's the control. It's the fear.
Yes.
It's all of
Yes.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And when you can do that, do away with that stuff, you're going to empower people. But people, that's the message that people are looking for. And so many of these preachers, they're ready to preach it, but they're stuck. They don't want to be seen as the heretic. They don't want to be seen as the outsider. There's a fear there. In which
Mm-hmm.
again, not condemning because I get it. I understand it. It's
Oh
very
yeah.
real, you know. But I would say to them, the truth is more powerful than the lie.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Reginald. This is the perfect way to end this conversation. You shared so many amazing insights with us today. I really, really appreciate your presence on the podcast. And I know you mentioned your Substack. Do you want to just like tell us again about where we can find you, and yeah, any other thing that you're working on that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, that's just you can go to the Substack. That's the Sovereign Soul Collective at reginaldmartin.substack.com. And that's the portal for essentially everything that I do. So if they go there, They're going to get, I'm writing articles all the time, and I'm teaching these ideas. I'm doing different series where I actually break down I'm actually breaking down the Bible and the Jesus miracles into the esoteric meaning. So that's a
Mm.
series that I'm actually doing right now, and what that means to us in our lives every day. Because again, it wasn't about us worshiping that; it was about
Mhm.
us being and experiencing life. How does that happen? you know. So that's what those miracles are about. But reginaldmartin.substack.com, that's the Sovereign Soul Collective. Get there, and you can take off from there.
Thank you. Thank you, Reginald.
You bet. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I absolutely have loved this conversation. This has been so much fun.